Patrice Griffin,
Here in Kalamazoo.
Kim Hollers. Kim is absent. She contacted me earlier, so she won't be here today. Bobby Hopewell,
Present, City of Kalamazoo.
Brenda Hughes,
Here, City of Kalamazoo.
Sakia Lee,
Present, City of Kalamazoo.
Carol McGlynn,
Here, City of Kalamazoo.
John Oliver,
Here, Kalamazoo.
Jonathan Pulley,
Present, Calhoun County.
Alyssa Stewart. That is it.
All right. Damaro, would you tell us your location, please? And name again.
Yep, sorry about that. Kalamazoo County.
All right, may we have a motion to excuse the absent members?
So moved.
Moved by Ben Damaro, supported by Brenda Hughes, I think I saw. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Absolutely great. All right. We have the minutes to approve. You should have received those in your packet. Any questions, comments, changes? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by McGlynn,
Support.
supported by Hughes. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Also, I'm going to ask for that again. You folks that are saying aye and you're on mute, we really need to hear your voice for the recording. So I'll have all of you unmute yourselves for a minute. And then I'll ask all those in favor, aye.
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 Aye, opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very, very much. Dr. Cooney and Alyssa Stewart, would you state your names and your locations? Dr. Cooney, go first.
Thank you, Bobby. I'm Don Cooney. I'm in Kalamazoo.
All right, Ms. Stewart.
Alyssa Stewart in Kalamazoo County.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, we have the agenda before you. The change would be that we have a presentation under new business that we'll move to the end, and we'll try to get through any miscellaneous stuff and what have you, because our guests can't be here until 1 p.m. So are there any other changes, additions to the agenda? All right, hearing none, with the change I made, we'll take that as consensus. All right, do we have reports of officers, boards, and/or committees? Any general stuff? Any updates from the coordinator?
No.
Okay, I was hoping you were going to say yes, trying to finish this time here. Unfortunately, okay. How about any unfinished business?
I believe we don't have any unfinished
All right.
business either.
All right, miscellaneous items. Mr. Coordinator, any updates on the city budget? How about that to extend some time?
The city budget, I believe, is under review. The city commission will make a decision on the budget in January.
All right. So I know there is a budget meeting, or excuse me, a commission meeting today or tonight. I know they're going to be talking about these pods that they're looking at. And I know there's been some belief of a little lack of communication with the Edison neighborhood folks. Do you have any updates on this pod stuff? And maybe you can tell folks what I'm talking about, because they may not know.
I do not have any information about that. Our housing development coordinator, Sherilyn Parsons, will probably have more information. A community investment division had a staff meeting last Friday, and we just learned a little bit more about it. For those that may not be aware, there's, I think, some discussion around housing pods being established in the Edison neighborhood on Stockbridge Avenue. If you all know where the former DHHS building is at, I think it's some conversation of pods potentially being established there to address some of the housing instability challenges. Right now, that's all I know about it. I think HRI may be involved. I know that location, the city purchased that location, but other than that, I don't know where that project is at.
Ms. Stewart, do you have any information? I heard there was a meeting with United Way and others regarding these the other day.
Yeah, I can share a little bit. I know just enough to be dangerous, as they say, with because the continuum of care is housed at United Way. So I can share what I know, and then I will try to not speak to things that I'm not sure of, so I don't create any misinformation. So there's sort of two distinct things. There is a pod project being worked on and led by HRI, who has purchased 50 pods to be brought to Kalamazoo to support and provide transitional housing to unsheltered individuals. There, of the 50 pods, 16 are 2-person pods, and the remainder are 1-person pods. So mostly serving individuals, and then also some potentially couples or families. And these are transitional housing pods, to be clear. They are secure, lockable, heated and air conditioned pods that can be placed, very flexible and can be placed in lots of different places. They're self-anchoring and self-leveling. They can be assembled and disassembled very quickly with minimal tools. So they're very versatile in their application. And they are supposed to last for as much as 15 years. So also very durable. So yeah, so they are really, they made this purchase. They went, HRI and some others went and saw some of these across the country and thought they could be an option that could create another option for folks in our community, some of whom have been camping up until now. So again, without any access to heat, lockable space and a lot of those things. So yeah, so they made that purchase and that is underway. And then separately, I know the city purchased the Stockbridge property that Kevin just mentioned and is considering an emergency action at tonight's meeting that would allow the space to be used, that property to be used for sort of emergency responsive housing things. So sort of two parallel things happening, but that are sort of converging and coming together. So yeah, I would encourage folks to check out tonight's meeting if they would like more information on that emergency city action. I'm not sure if HRI will be talking about the pod project tonight, or if it's more going to be just focused on the city side of making this decision, so that there are options for how this property could be used in support of our houseless population. Any other specific questions?
No, I guess just for the sake of discussion, I think that as we think about prosperity, I understand we need to provide some ways for folks to get out of the climate during the challenging season we have coming up and beyond. But I'm also about how do we move folks to success. So we do well, I think, in this community often about providing this, here it is, here it is, here it is. And we need to do better at some of that too, before someone logs on and wants to give me what for. But what's the next step? We get somebody in a pod, should we be working with them on how we get them out of the pod into housing and into a job? And that we got to be talking about workforce development and jobs because that's your pathway out of poverty. And good Commissioner Dr. Cooney has taught me this over and over. If we get people employment and get them resources into their pockets beyond just providing resources in the community, which it's a balancing act, then we can get them on a pathway of success and opportunity. And so I get concerned if you think about some of the encampment stuff and whatever, that we've enabled certain things, but then how are we helping folks to get to where they need to be? And that's to me, feels sometimes as though sometimes that's the left out piece. So I guess, Ms. Stewart, I'm saying that to you and to Mr. Ford as they, and I guess Dr. Cooney, or Commissioner Cooney, as you go back and you start looking at this, then what are the other connective pieces to success beyond having heat in the roof, which are vitally important. Never said they weren't. I'm gonna look at the camera, never said they weren't. But knowing that we want people to have sustainability in their prosperity and opportunities, not just filling an immediate gap in need.
That's a great point. And I can say, I know that is part of HRI's thinking and consideration is that of being able, by being able to provide this housing, one, it would provide an address for folks, a mailing address, which we know, having that place and that space is critical to being able to obtain and sustain employment. And also there would be sort of that wraparound approach of connection to other services. So that service delivery, there'd also be 24/7 staffing and support on site to ensure the safety of the residents.
That would be my next question.
Site. Yep.
Okay.
I have just a quick question. So I heard you say like 1 and 2 person pods. I often see when I'm working downtown families, and so I'm wondering if families are being kind of like navigated to somewhere else, and if this is just for, I would say, like adults without children.
Yes, Takia. So there absolutely have been families unsheltered visibly, I would say, in the encampments at times, but also less visibly, living in cars, couch hopping. Like, we absolutely know that there are families, more families than we sort of have in our data who are experiencing homelessness or housing instability. Yes, the thought is that this would be sort of a response for this growing population we're seeing of individuals, or even, two generational. We have, in some cases, older adults with their adult children, for example. So that could be an example of a family that could live in this situation, but it'll be more for that niche. And then, yeah, families will continue to be navigated to many of the other resources and supports, which still also need to be bolstered. To be clear, we don't always have enough resources on that side either, but would be navigated to supports that are more appropriate for families with young children.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Well,
Thank you.
Ms. Griffin,
you
you're
mean
first.
Patrice or me?
Patrice, you're first.
Okay,
I forgot that we have the Vice Mayor and we have the Vice Mayor. I sort of screwed that
Two
up.
of
So I'm going with Griffin first.
Go
Okay,
for Patrice.
my apologies, Vice Mayor. Thank you for Mayor Hopewell. So I just wanted to chime in with 2 points. So for tonight's meeting, what's on the docket is the ordinance itself, the emergency housing ordinance. And so the ordinance itself does not specify a location. It just it creates a framework and outlines everything that needs to be part of this, which is what Alyssa mentioned, the 24 hours, how people can access it and so on and so forth. Separate from that, HRI is looking to use this location. But some of the concerns that I do have, and Sakia just asked the question around that. When I just went to the website that HRI has posted about this pod project, I have concerns because it's only for adults. And so of course, I don't want anybody outside. I don't want anybody homeless, period, at the end of that sentence. However, a lot of our emergency solutions have been geared towards this same population. And so what are we going to do emergency for our families, for our children? And so that's something that's still concerning because they won't be able to be part of this project. Not that people don't need help, but what about, especially with SPK and our 2-generational approach?
Thank you. The other Vice Mayor, I see you open your microphone.
Well, I think that Patrice did an excellent job. This is not the answer to the problem. This is an emergency situation to stop people from freezing to death. And it is written into the legislation, the ordinance, that this is temporary. but it's to get people through the winter. And we have a much deeper problem. And we know that the people who have been at the encampment are the tip of the iceberg. We know that there are many other families that are not going out to the encampment, but are houseless. And it's very important that they don't get left off the agenda. In fact, they should be at the head of the agenda. So I see this as an emergency situation that would stop some people from freezing to death, but realizing we have a lot more to do. And I think what's interesting tonight will be the restrictions that are being put on these sites and how they can be, what are the requirements? You have to have access to water. They have to be protected. There has to be staff 24 hours on the scene. I think all those things are very, very important. So tonight we're going to take a step to protect people through the winter. We got a long way to go to deal with the homeless population in the city.
Yeah, my only thing was that, well, I'll stop there, and Dr. Oliver, I'll let you go and I'll wrap it up when.
No, I won't wrap it up. I just have a question of, you said temporary transition. How is that defined? And you mentioned through the winter, when does it start, end? Just clarifying that for me.
Yeah. I think Alyssa would be in a better spot than me, but my understanding is that these things are on their way and that they'll be set up pretty soon. There's a sunset in September of 2023 for these things to be removed. So I expect that once we pick sites and go through the what has to be done to there has to be a meeting. If they pick a site, there has to be a community meeting with the people from that area to talk about that and get their input before a site is verified. So John, I expect they're going to try to move on this as fast as they can. Winter's coming.
So as far as eligibility, a person or persons in those facilities, how long would their 10-year lease stay? What's the length of time allowed and available?
So, Ms. Stewart, before you answer that, I guess, is that information on the HRI website? If it is, then let's just refer folks to that and you can get that. So it is there. Can someone put the HRI site into the chat? Or do we have a chat? I don't know, IT, if
We don't have a chat.
Okay.
I'll send it to everybody.
Thank you very, very much. Ms. Stewart, was that what you were going to say? I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add, that's great, because I agree. I don't want to speak for HRI because this is always all fast moving and evolving. One thing I would just share, you asked about the language of transitional. Some nuances of that, like transitional versus permanent housing, is just transitional housing would be in a space that's not meant for long-term habitation, right? Because these units do not have their own bathrooms. They do not have kitchens. Those are the types of features that would have to be present for something to be considered a permanent housing unit. And so just to clarify on that side, these are units that just have basically sleeping, storage, sort of quarters within them. So wouldn't meet that criteria. So would have to be used for shorter term housing, not long-term permanent housing.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this from anybody? Or so what I was, Ms. Hughes?
Yeah, so you said that, Alyssa, you said that they were all heated and air conditioned. Does that mean that the infrastructure has to be there for 50 different units to be heated? And I know that HRI got a grant, I'm assuming a federal grant, for these pods and stuff. Is that supposed to pay for all of this and staffing and
so I'm not going to have her answer that question because she's starting to wander into a space that she's not guiding this. So I'm encouraging you all to go to the website if you want to gather more information about this and want to direct to HRI, because I don't think we have the answers. And
Well, I haven't looked at the website lately, but few days ago, I did. Really, it's very vague. So I knew that she had more information than what I saw anyway, but
yeah. I'm not sure that she does, but our coordinator is going to send out the website. Kevin, if you maybe for our next meeting, even though the POP will be here and everything, if there's some information out there that you can gather for us, that'd be great.
Oh, I just sent everybody the website to HRI. You can look at it. Second thing, I want to encourage to watch the city commission meeting tonight.
Yeah.
You can watch it live, or you can watch it. It will be recorded. You can watch it after it's recorded. I think it'll be on YouTube, maybe PMN as well. But I will highly encourage, one, check out the website of HRI, and two, watch city commission meeting tonight to learn more about some details around what Don and Alyssa spoke about.
Excellent, excellent. I think we need to keep an eye on this from Share Prosperity Group, because as I've said over and over, per the guidance of the city commission, we are the guardians of shared prosperity, and this is an issue related to that. And anything we're doing as a city should be leading us, whether it's to generational or into sustainability for folks and moving them on the continuum. So I'm hoping that there's some great supports to while you're there temporarily that helps connect you to what's going to happen when it's not temporary anymore, and get you on a right landing pad. So anyway, I know Ben Damero is trying to get people to get employment. We've got lots of jobs out there. How are we making that, connecting those dots? So anyway, lots of opportunity here. The one thing we need to know is that there's an effort to take care of folks as best we can during this extremely challenging season that seems to have started today. So,
Mayor Hopewell,
yes, ma'am.
could we potentially, Alyssa Stewart here, sorry, could we potentially invite HRI to come present at a future meeting about this? I mean, I know there's some big outcomes, to happen tonight potentially, but I just want to throw that out. Maybe if that'd be of interest to folks, that might make sense to have them come speak to it.
How did I know that request was coming? Yeah, I think the coordinators heard you, and so we'll try to make that happen. I think that makes a lot of sense. So, we often have guests, and it looks like our guest has arrived, and so we'll move into new business. And Mr. Ford, I'll turn it over to you.
Yep. So Karen Lynn Williams will be presenting about the American Rescue Plan funds that I think the city has already received, but City Commission will be voting on the budget, and some SPK resources will be coming from those funds in 2022. So she's given this presentation to City Commission. This is just an opportunity to educate you all as it may influence some decision making in 2022, but get everybody up to speed on that, on the same page. And so I'll turn it over to her. I believe she has a PowerPoint if IT could help with that. And for the record, she says she will be here at 1. She arrived early, so she loves us. There you go.
Ms. Williams, before you start, part of your presentation, you're probably going to do this anyway, is introducing yourself and what you do, because I work for the city and I don't recognize you or know you. So
oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's all good. So anyway.
Well, pleased to meet you. Thank you so much for extending your invitation today. I actually work with Steve Brown with the Foundation for Excellence as kind of half of my position, and the other half is working as a city grant specialist, which is how ARPA has become a lot of the work that I'm doing, the stimulus funding. I've been at the city for about 1.5 years now, so it's been a great learning opportunity. And I am going to share a PowerPoint here. If you can give me a thumbs up if it is appearing. Good. Okay, we'll see if it lets me click. So my goal today is to cover the American Rescue Plan, the stimulus funding that the city received at about the 30,000 foot level. I don't want to bore you with a ton of details, but then to kind of dovetail and explain how we think that may impact SPK in 2022. To start with that 30,000 foot level, every single community in the United States received a chunk of funding through the American Rescue Plan. It's called the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Act. And that went to all of the communities, like I mentioned. Kalamazoo, as an entitlement community, received our money directly from the federal government. And we will receive $38.9 million when all is told. Part of that came in 2021, and the other half will come in 2022. This funding has to be committed to projects by December 31st, 2024, and then fully expended by December 31st, 2026. And these bullet points here are kind of the high-level ways that these funds can be used. Obviously, responding to COVID, working on economic stabilization, replacing lost revenue that our cities experienced, addressing systemic public health and economic challenges, and then this is a federal grant, so there are significant reporting requirements, implementation requirements, auditing, and so on. So a small amount of it is allowed for administrative costs. So as Kevin mentioned, we worked very closely with City Commission to really talk about philosophically, how did we want to utilize these funds as a city? We went through a significant body of data. We looked at the National Community Survey, which is a statistically significant survey done every 2 years. It was done in 2021. We developed a specific survey for our community related to stimulus funds and how they should be used. And we had over 1,500 responses to that survey. We spent significant time reading the 150-page document that outlines all of the eligible uses and intentions for the funding that came out of Congress. We obviously spent quite a bit of time focusing on Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, which had huge community engagement. You know, it is our guiding document at this point in time, our strategic plan. And then the City Commission had also spent some pretty significant time in 2021 talking about priorities and where we should invest. Luckily, all 5 of those things really overlapped and formed a really logical way for us to target these funds in 5 primary categories. Economic impact, infrastructure, housing, looking both at constructing housing and then also offering ancillary services to address homelessness, which is kind of what Alyssa was just talking about. Youth, looking at places and supports to help young people succeed. And the 5th one was safety, looking at crime, gun violence, and violence prevention. Looking at these, some of them are very internal focused, like the city should be the primary and the lead for infrastructure. But there are several areas where it makes a lot of sense to engage our community partners who have significant expertise. So now that we narrowed down to these 5 categories, we started looking at 2022 and saying, of the projects we have kind of sitting in the hopper as a city, the things that we've focused on, which of these makes sense to direct ARPA funding for? We came up with a matrix, you know, we looked at the 5 categories I just showed you, and then really wanted to make sure we could hit the ground running with quality programs. So we looked at things like equitable outcomes. We looked at use of evidence, either being an evidence-based program or having a pretty significant evaluation plan built into the program to prove that it's effective. Who can hit the ground running in 2020? Again, that alignment with Imagine Kalamazoo 2025. Level of impact, both the number of people that a project would touch and then how significantly that project would impact the lives of those it impacted. For some of the programs that were coming back to us again that we had funded previously, we wanted to see a track record of success to make sure that they deserved that ongoing investment. Financial sustainability is a big one. As I mentioned earlier, in 2026, this money has to be gone. So we wanted to make lasting investments that will make sustainable change. So either one-time significant investments on like capital projects or funding programs that have long-term financial sustainability plans. And then if we had any mandates that had been placed on the city by the federal government or external agencies that we weren't implementing, we also wanted to make sure that we were coming into compliance. So we received, typically in May, we go out and we ask the departments to propose projects internally. And we received, I think, 111 different proposals. One of them was for SPK funding in 2022. We evaluated all of those and then tried to maximize between our regular budget, our FFE budget, our SPK budget. How can we make the most impact with the funds that we have available? And the answer was, obviously, we want to keep funding SPK and fully intend to fund that in 2022. But approximately half of that funding will come from this ARPA pot of money from the federal government. So the goal today is to kind of talk about what that would mean for organizations applying for SPK funding, how that might impact some decisions you have to make, and then I will try to answer questions you have. Just kind of a big asterisk on this, the federal government has not issued their final ruling on this funding yet. So we're operating in this kind of gray area where we have a lot of guidance, but that guidance may change a little bit. So the first thing we wanted to say is that I don't believe the fact that half of the money comes from ARPA will change at all who you choose to fund. Treasury has identified what they're calling qualified census tracts, and any eligible service provided in those qualified census tracts is 100% eligible for ARPA funding. As you can see, all of the SPK neighborhoods, this is a map of the whole city, much of the city, and definitely all of the SPK neighborhoods are clearly in these qualified census tracts. The next key part, Treasury identified 66 expenditure categories, and every single project that we fund with ARP dollars has to align with one of these categories. Looking at those 66, I pulled out the ones that I believe line incredibly well with SPK, looking at things like educational assistance, healthy childhood environments, housing supports, mental health and substance use services, anything impacting social determinants of health, household assistance, including food programs and job training. I think clearly the 8 programs that you chose to fund this year align very, very closely with each of these expenditure categories. So I don't think it's going to impact your ability to fund anyone you want to fund next year. The thing it will impact, as we mentioned, it's federal dollars. So there is some additional reporting that's required. And I'm actually thrilled to see Alyssa's on the call today because we just finished our evaluation. City Commission allocated $1.1 million of ARP funding for something called ARPA responsive grants, which looked at 3 of those 5 categories. And we literally just finished evaluating them today, but we have kind of developed a template process here that I think would make a lot of sense to apply to some of the SPK funding next year. So this, what I'm presenting right here on this slide is really kind of what we've done with the United Way funding. Treasury does require that any subrecipients would have to do a risk assessment. We developed a risk assessment and we administered it. The key thing is if an organization does not score well, that doesn't mean you can't fund them. That means you offer them extra technical assistance and extra support. So kind of an ancillary benefit for the work that we've done in this first chunk with United Way is that organizations that have never had federal funding before are hopefully going to be in a better position to have federal funding in the future. They're going to learn, how to appropriately document things for the federal government. They're going to learn, record retention policies, getting in the right systems. It's a great opportunity for us to build capacity in these nonprofits. Second thing is you have to have clear scoring and selection criteria so that you can document why you chose to fund the organizations you chose to fund. I know SPK already has that, and that you can use any ones that you want to use. It just has to be a clearly defined process. The third kind of set are things that we accomplished through EC Impact, which I know Kevin used for the first time this past year. And it's really, training people to understand what they're getting into if it's federal funding. We held these information sessions that were available online, but then also available via recording. and clearly explained to anybody who is applying, this is what you're getting into. This is what this step looks like. This is exactly what the application looks like. This is what the reporting will be, and this is what it looks like. So that there were no surprises for any of our applicants. Everything was, clearly explained and ready to go. The monthly reporting is going to be pretty simple. It's a documentation of expenditures. Our concern was with brand new organizations that maybe hadn't had those federal grants before. We wanted to make sure that they knew how to document expenditures clearly. So it's a simple spot. They upload their reporting. We check it and make sure, but we didn't want to get 3 or 6 months down the road and find out that maybe someone was making expenditures that didn't make sense or that weren't acceptable. So again, that technical assistance, that support. There's also quarterly reporting that we as a city have to do to the Treasury. Pretty simple things. It's how many funds have you spent? What is your progress? And what are your outputs or outcomes? So 4 very simple data points. The key thing being, we do understand it's a little more complicated. It is federal money, but there will be a lot of ongoing support to help increase that capacity for all of our applicants. And I'm very willing to answer any questions you would have. Just wanted to make sure that you knew about this now, as opposed to in February or March when the applications go out.
Other questions? I can't see. I'm looking for. Yeah, I don't see. No questions. Wow, that's impressive.
It's kind of awesome.
You hit it out of the park, Ms. Williams. That's awesome. So we'll look forward to hearing more about what happens through the budget process. I think Mr. Ford, you said the budget will be approved in January. I know it has to be approved by February, but it will be approved in January. And did you at all stipulate the amount, Ms. Williams, that SPK would be?
I'm going to speak in round numbers. I believe it's about 1.2 million, with about 6.5 coming from FFE and 6.5 coming from ARPA.
Okay, just to give everybody a little context on the numbers. And a reminder, folks, that remember, we are a partnering body, not necessarily a granting body. So that doesn't mean that we need to solicit or whatever. If we have efforts that are going on in the community or efforts that we think we need to move forward that fill that gap, we can move that work forward. I know Ben Damero's heavily working on workforce. I think and I know that Mr. Ford's going to be talking to us about that probably next month, but there's some significant efforts regarding workforce that, again, is on that pathway and on that 2-generational approach. And I know that we've had significant conversations about childcare, which is certainly, again, not to keep focusing on Ben, but Ben has brought this up over and over and over, that if we can fill some of that gap, we can get people jobs. If we can get people jobs, all that stuff. So we got a lot of opportunities here. Mr. Pulley.
Cool. Thank you, Jonathan Pulley speaking. Couple of questions regarding the ARPA funding. So 50% of the SPK budget, will it be split between the two, and then, or will there be additional to the SPK budget?
I believe it's flat funded at the request that was received by the city departments.
Okay, and then I think that kind of segues into my second question. I know grant making is a challenging process at times, and I oftentimes think about community partners who are unfamiliar. I know that you mentioned some supports for the community, but what does that look like? And how will it affect not only existing grantees, but also additional potential grantees moving forward, knowing that these compliance requirements can also be seen as barriers. I work at the Kellogg Foundation, and I'm a grant specialist. I know we've got a lot of, so you're ringing all the bells, but I try to keep our community partners and those folks that are on the ground and closest to the work in mind, and just wanted to know, what does that support look like, and like technical assistance and so on and so forth.
Well, first and foremost, I know that you as a committee can decide if you want to do separate things with the two separate chunks of money. As Mayor Hopewell just mentioned, if there's organizations that you really, really want to help and you're not sure that they could meet those federal requirements, there's no reason you can't designate the FFE funds to go that direction, and then maybe put the ARP funds on those that you know have the capacity. I mean, it's totally your decision how you'd want to do that. The other thing I will say that we did with this first round of funding through United Way, as I mentioned, was the online training sessions. Really clearly, they were 90 minutes. They were not short sessions. And it was Heather Rittenhouse at the United Way is an amazing person. She brought them all up, every single screen, walked them through, and question by question, does everyone know what this means? Do you need support with this? They also, one of the things, if it's a federal grant, you need to have a SAM number and a DUNS registration. They sent YouTube videos. Exactly. If you don't have one, this is click by click how you go through and get registered in these systems. So it was done very intentionally with the purpose of building capacity. And I appreciate that. Hands off to Alyssa and her team for the way they did it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Well, Ms. Williams, thank you very much for your presentation and information, and we'll look forward to the budget process and look forward to the feds actually moving this forward and making all of this happen. Grand opportunities for certainly the work we do as SPK, but moreover for our entire community. So we'll just keep going. All right. Team, any miscellaneous comments? Okay, hearing none. And do we have any public comments?
There are no public comments at this time.
Wow. Okay. So going once, going twice. We stand adjourned.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Happy holidays.
Yeah. Take care.
Thanks.